Craftsman Days are here at Lowe's with big savings on the tools you need. Save $100 on the Craftsman V26 Tool Power Tool Combo Kit, now at $199. No matter what the project is, Craftsman's high-quality, high-performance products empower you to build on. Stop by your nearest Lowe's store and check out the full line of Craftsman tools today. Valid through 6/18 while supplies last. Selection varies by location.
The rain's going to continue. And now they're knocking on Dynasty's doorstep. The Florida Panthers back-to-back Stanley Cup champions.
A pair for the Panthers, back-to-back for the Cats. Congratulations to the Florida Panthers, 2025 Stanley Cup champions, as we welcome you to 32 Thoughts, the podcast presented by the GMC Sierra AT4X. Friedman, Bukauskas, Dom Shramati, back with you. We're going to get to all of it as this Stanley Cup final is now wrapped after Game 6 on Tuesday night. But Elliotte, wanted to start with what's always one of the great scenes as the hockey season comes to a close. The scene on the ice after the Stanley Cup is handed out. So Florida this year, Alexander Barkov takes it from Commissioner Gary Bettman, celebrates with the team, skates around the ice. It goes to Nate Schmidt, who hadn't won. Goes to Seth Jones, who hadn't won. Tomasz Nosek, Vitek Vanacek, and on and on and on. And quickly we realize it was not only first the players that hadn't won before, but also those that just weren't everyday players in the lineup before the returning cast got a chance to hoist the cup again. What did you make of how all of that unfolded for the Panthers in the aftermath of a second straight Stanley Cup championship?
So Barkov explained to Gene in the interview that the players had decided that beforehand, that if they won the series, it would unfold the way you described it. The ones who hadn't celebrated before getting the opportunity to go first. Kyle, I thought it was an incredible gesture. You know, we've seen situations, I remember the Blackhawks one, where it went from Taves to Michael Handzus and then Jamal Mayers, but then it goes, to King, to Duncan Keith, Seabrook, all the guys who were the core. This is the first one I can remember. And anyone out there, if I'm wrong, you'll tell me. But this is the first one I remember, Kyle, that went like that. Everyone who hadn't won goes first. I thought it was an incredible touch, an incredible plan. And as it was unfolding, I was saying to myself, if I was captain of an NHL team, well, let's be honest, if I was captain of an NHL team, I would finish 32nd. But if I was captain of an NHL team, I would like to think that I would come up with something like that. When it was over and everybody was on the ice and the media was out there, I ran into the owner of the Panthers, Vinny Viola.
Okay.
And we were talking about that. And he called it servant leadership. That was the phrase he used to describe why he thinks the Panthers are as good as they are. He said he credited the players and the other people who helped build the organization, in whether it's business or hockey ops, but he talked about the players and servant leadership. And, I asked him to explain it to me, and he said, what you do is for your teammates and everybody else. You are not any more important than anyone else is, and what you do for them first. That's the way he explained it to me. And I think in a lot of ways that perfectly encapsulates what the Panthers are and why they're so successful. Kyle, you don't win without great players. You have to have great players. First and foremost, if you don't have great players, you cannot win. And the Panthers have great players. But you have to have a great organization all around. And it's clear that, we're talking about the tax advantage, right? And don't forget that for a long time, it didn't matter that the Panthers were in a state with great taxes. Nobody wanted to play there. They weren't successful. And But finally, the way they ran their organization caught up with the in-state advantages they had. And, you know, Viola hired great people. They run a great organization. But it's really interesting the way the players talk about why their team is successful. Like, I asked a bunch of them, how come when you got here, you became better? Because so many guys show up in Florida and they become better players. And Jonah Gadjevich said that when he showed up in Florida, they told him, because he showed up after they lost in the final, they told him, Jonah, this is the way the final is going to be played. So we're going to play like that all year. And if you want to be successful here, you have to learn how to play like the way we're going to see in the finals. So that's what he did. And he became an important piece of their team. Nico Mikkola said that one of the reasons he's been successful there is he says, I can be myself. I'm not afraid of being myself. Sam Reinhart talked about the year in 2022 when they got their butts kicked in the playoffs by the Lightning, the 4-0 series after they won the President's Trophy, where he said, you know, we thought we were good. We weren't that good. And that being a big wake-up call for everyone. And Bill Zito talked about how the players accept mistakes. Like he talked about Noshik's penalty in Game 1, the puck over glass that led to the power play winner in Game 1. You know, nobody, like Noshik didn't come out of the lineup. Nobody blamed him for it. Nobody said, what a terrible play. They're just like, okay, and they moved on. And we've talked about the Nate Schmidt story where one of Barkov or Reinhardt told him, we don't do that here. Like they self-police. You know, Maurice.
My money's on Reinhardt, by the way, the more I've thought about it.
It is really, eh? Okay.
Oh, yeah.
I should have asked him about that. And then, Maurice, he lays down the law when he has to lay down the law. But I just think it's a great call. You don't win without great players, and you don't win without a great organization. But that phrase that Vinny Viola mentioned, servant leadership, it stuck with me for the rest of the night, Kyle. Like I wrote it down. It's at the top of my notes for the pod. I really like that. I really like that.
So good. And it's really interesting you bring that up and the conversations you had with some of the other players about it, because I asked a similar question to AJ Greer, and it was after the morning skate before one of the games in Carolina last round. And he was one of the last guys in the dressing room after being on the ice. And I just asked because he would be a guy that, wasn't part of the team that won last year. It was all new to him this year. And Elliotte, like, I'm not over exaggerating. He went on for 5 or 6 minutes, and I just sat there and I listened and I listened and I listened to the point where, like, you could tell some of the staff are kind of looking at him going, like, you're going to miss the bus here if you don't get going. And I don't want to cut him off, but I'm looking at the clock going, I know he's got things to do. But he just had so much to say about why it works with that group and that organization. It really is fascinating. And then actually, I remembered back to this time last year, Elliotte, and you'd mentioned on this podcast a conversation you had with another manager around the league